So, just so you'll know, I'm recording my desktop audio as well. So if you say anything, it's going to be in the recording. Alright. Let's begin. So, welcome. This is a presentation about competitive Commander. I have heard that we're going to be running a bunch more competitive Commander events in the next couple of, the next year or so, in bigger events, our regional championships and Let's Play Brisbane. And I thought I'd put together something because I think most of us don't have much experience with competitive Commander, and the demand is rising. So let's crack into it. So for those of you who don't know me, those of you who are here today do, but we're recording this. I'm Tyrone, nice to meet you. I've been an L2 since 2019. I have been a judge for numerous quickfire CEDH League finals. That's around Queensland, around Brisbane. So I've judged a solid number of big ticket CEDH events like winner duels and that sort of thing, championships. I'm based in Toowoomba, which is one of the largest Commander hubs in Australia. We generally get over 40 people on a Wednesday night for casual Commander, and we're getting 12 to 16 on every Friday for competitive Commander. Toowoomba also has a bit of a pedigree for winning those big CEDH tournaments down in Brisbane too. So they're around, and I'm very much involved with those people. I was involved with the setting up of the quickfire event. Some of the background stuff, nothing too exciting, but just more of like, how do we run it, what rule set do we use, what do we need for judges, etc, etc. So let's talk about CEDH. What is CEDH? So CEDH has now been recognized by Wizards in their bracket system, which is their definition is very, very basic. Basically, like, whatever you want, just go buck wild, everybody. So, competitive Elder Dragon Highlander, or competitive Commander, is this format. It's a very powerful variant of Commander, where the aim is to just win as hard as possible. CEDH matches are best of one, which most of Commander is. The decks are very heavily optimized. They are optimized not only to win as fast as possible, but also optimized to stop everyone else from winning, and optimized to beat the meta. Unlike regular Commander, politics doesn't really happen much. It's generally frowned upon. Sometimes it will come up. Someone will, say, hey, if you don't attack me, I'll do X thing or whatever. And this is generally discouraged by the community. At least the community in Toowoomba is a big learning thing. So when someone comes into the format and does that sort of thing, they talk to them like, look, this isn't the kind of gameplay we want, blah blah blah. And it's usually pretty common that if someone does try to do some politics stuff, it'll just get ignored. It'll just be like, no, thank you, I'm attacking you. It also lacks a rule zero discussion, which is a thing that is getting bigger and bigger and bigger in Commander, but in CEDH just does not exist. In the same way that a rule zero discussion does not exist in a modern tournament. You don't pull out your affinity deck and say, this is what I'm playing, and your opponent goes, oh, I don't like that. Have you got anything else? It just doesn't. That's not what we're here for. So I mentioned the Quickfire League before. It's been going on for about 2 years now, I want to say. It's got over 10 stores involved in Queensland, and it's very quickly growing. Small little word on the grapevine. I think we have a store in Tasmania that's interested in joining. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it's quite large. Over 100 unique players. The league basically, I think it's fortnightly or weekly. Every store involved runs a Commander night, a CEDH night, and players get points depending on their final standing. And then the top X players from each store get an invite to the finals. Pardon me. Basically. So, one thing I will say about CEDH, annoyingly, it has the word competitive in it, which is a word that we also use as judges to describe a certain type of event. So for as much as I can, I'm going to refer to it as CEDH. And if I'm talking about competitive REL, I'll say competitive or competitive REL. That is an annoying part of the name of this format. But yes, CEDH is the word I'll try to use as much as possible to remove confusion. So the increasing demand in Comp REL events is a big important one. This is what players want, basically. We've been seeing this worldwide, that this format has grown a lot. Ever since COVID, it's been growing quite a lot. And because there is an increase in demand in it, that's what we're going to run, is the short version. Many people, look, this format is very different from everything else that we know. It's it doesn't fit within a lot of the guidelines that we have for events, and things just happen differently. Requires a bit of extra learning, and it's not my personal favorite format. I don't enjoy playing this format. I do not play this format. I only judge this format. And a lot of people... So there's lots of controversy around CEDH, which we'll get into later. And a lot of people sort of poo-poo on CEDH. They look at CEDH and go, this is terrible. This format sounds awful and I hate it. Whether you hate it or not, people want to play it. And if you are interested in judging it, then that's what we're here for. You don't have to love the format. You don't have to understand why people love the format. But if you want to judge it, then there are things you do have to understand. So I think the next one is, Let's Play Brisbane. There's a big event coming up there, a winner sheet. I think it's an over 2-day event. Not sure how big it's going to be, but considering Queensland is one of the bigger hubs for CEDH in Australia, I'm optimistic. I won't be at that event, unfortunately. I am busy overseas. Now, what to expect in a CEDH tournament? Longer rounds, but less of them. So you could probably spend around the same amount of time in the tournament, despite the fact that the rounds will be longer. The games are going to be more complex. That's a big thing, and that's true of Commander in general, right? If there are 4 100-card decks that are singleton, take out basic lands, you're going to get well over 300 unique cards that can appear in a game, compared to, like I said, about 50 in a 1v1 game. It's there's just a lot more going on. There's a lot more interaction, there's a lot more options, there's a lot more stuff. When I point a lightning bolt at something, there's 3 times as many things to point it at. A lot of the normal skills in 1v1 Magic can be overridden by politics. And I don't mean this in like the kind of politics that you see in a regular Commander game, if you don't attack me, I'll do this thing. I mean more of like, hey, this person's scary, and 3 of us have counterspells. We're all going to try and stop this person. This person might be in a better board position, they might be a better player, but if they are just going to throw their combo out there, or if they're just going to be a threat, then other players are going to focus on them. Because that's just the correct line. That's the way to win. This person is most likely to win, so let's knock them down a notch. Other skills get exemplified and are more valuable. Timing is an incredibly valuable skill in CEDH. The basic version of this skill is somebody tries to combo off, someone else counters their spell. Now there is one less counter spell for you to combo off yourself. But there's a lot more to it. Basically, there's a lot of other skills that get exemplified that we wouldn't normally see being particularly powerful in regular Magic. Possibility of assistance from a player in the game is another one that just doesn't exist in regular Magic, right? If there is one player who is particularly scary, then a third player may help another player to, or may incite or give advice to another player within the game about dealing with it. And that is something that it just doesn't happen in 1v1 Magic. If another player in my match in Modern gives me advice, then that is like the wildest thing in the world. But in Commando, it's not uncommon. especially because that player's fate may rest in the first player's hands, right? If the only way that I'm going to get out of this is if you kill this thing, I'm going to try and convince you to kill this thing. Now, because in part the game is much more complex, players have a much better understanding of priority and steps in a turn than most. I would expect a much higher level of rules knowledge from a CDH player than the average Magic player, which is something to keep in mind, and it's definitely something that is very important in that game. So, what's the problem? Our policy doesn't fit, and neither does our software. Many parts of the MTR and RPG are not suitable for CDH. The rules were designed for 1v1 Magic. The tournament rules, were designed for 1v1 Magic. And they just don't function. Stuff like time limits, stuff like match points were carefully crafted and decided upon, considering 1v1, best 2 out of 3, 60 card decks. And they simply do not make a lot of sense when you stuff Commander into that. Another point, Commander games are usually best of 1, which means a game loss is a match loss. This definitely changes how a lot of the penalties function, and I'll get into that more in a second. So, an example. In the IPG, there are several points where an opponent is required to make a choice. For example, hidden card error, that opponent may choose which card is the selected card. Or mistrigger, an opponent may choose, does that trigger go on the stack now or never? And when an opponent needs to make a choice, and there are 3 of them, who makes that choice? And that's the sort of thing that we need to figure out. Or has been figured out, I suppose. We'll get into that. Now, when it comes to the software, topdeck.gg is the best software available. It was originally designed for Commander. It was originally called Command Tower, and then they have branched out into other formats as well. It does everything we want it to do, basically. It pairs multiple rounds of Commander, which many softwares can't. It allows you to modify the match points, it allows you to modify the pod sizes, it allows you to... it can have a QR code for players to sign up to the events. There's a QR code for the player, the controller, I believe. So judges get access to the back end of it. We can see deck lists, just like other softwares. It just works. I haven't found any other software that just works for Commander, for multiple round CDH tournaments. It is not without controversy. Unfortunately, it is not without controversy. You can scan the QR code if you want to learn more, but the short version is one of the guys who was heavily involved in it, I think his name is Zane, has a lot of anti-Semitic beliefs and posts, and I don't know if he's still involved. Honestly, I'm not sure, but there was a bunch of controversy. This is a bad person who was very much involved in this and is absolutely a consideration when thinking about the software. But you can read more where that QR code. So, there are 2 alternate tournament documents. When I say alternate, I mean the things that modify or replace or, altern the MTR and the IPG. So, Top Deck and Monarch are the 2 places that have alternate rules. So Top Deck is the website I was saying we should use for the software. Monarch is another one. The Monarch one is saved in a paste bin, and Monarch is the one that I prefer. Both of them are functional. Both of them are different. Both of them have their ups and downs. Neither is perfect. You got to keep in mind that the MTR and the documents that we have been created over the last 25, 30 years by innumerable judges, right? A massive amount of people have put work into the documents that we currently have, and creating new ones to fill in the gaps or creating things to add in to fill the gaps in is a hell of a lot of work, and it's usually done by a small group of people. So these documents sure are not perfect, and there are things that I would change in them. There are things that I do not like in them. They don't get updated as much. They are not as in-depth. They are not as perfect. Well, not to say that our current documents are perfect, but they're not as good as our current documents. But our current documents do not work. So let's go through Monarch. We're not going to go into the rules of top decks. I prefer Monarch. Monarch is the one that is used in most CDH tournaments, so that's the one we're going to go through. Let's go through the major differences to our normal documents. So, for those following along at home, especially perhaps those who are listening to the recording, I'm going to do a bit of a go a bit deeper into these documents. So this is where the presentation is going to turn into a bit more of the hard skills. If you would prefer to simply read through the document yourself and then skip forward to the closer to the end, that might be more your style. If you'd like to listen to me talk about like the major differences and point out what I think is very important to look at, then keep looking. If you want to follow along at home, then here's the QR code. At the end, after I talk about these documents, I'll talk about some of the issues that will come up. So if you are going to fast forward through, then that might be a handy place to stop. So let's begin. So part 1. This document is structured in the same way that the MTR is. It is basically adding in. So the way that it works is it sort of says, please insert this paragraph at this point of the MTR. So at 1.10, this document is inserting this A section. And I've highlighted parts of this that are, I think, particularly relevant. So, for multiplayer tournaments, if a player loses the game during match, they are expected to act as spectators for the remainder of the ongoing game. So if I get beaten, if I lose the game, then I can no longer influence that game directly. This is something that people are very much not going to be used to. Partly because in 1v1 Magic, this doesn't matter, this can't matter. And in regular Commander, this doesn't happen, right? Like, if I'm playing Commander against my friends, and I get knocked out, I am totally okay to just, tell them, like, hey, you should attack him with the Mothman. Like, they can listen to me if they want, but, like, yeah, this is, once they have lost the game, they are a spectator. Another difference. So the again, this is best of 1 format. The winner of a match is the player that won the required number of games, usually 1. And if the game is a draw, if the match is a draw, sorry. So if they go to time and no one has won, everyone gets points, their regular 1 match point, except for players who have a match loss penalty or players that conceded the match. Conceded is an important one. So, and again, this is something that is not generally considered in 1v1 Magic. If you get a match loss or you concede the match, then there is no way for you to get a draw in that match. And the same is true in this Commander rule set. So they've modified the rule set to be in line with that, if that makes sense. If you concede or get a match loss, you cannot draw the game. Conceding is an important one, and we'll get back to that very soon. I'm sure many of you have heard all sorts of horrible tales about conceding in CEDH. So, next part. This is regarding to the seeding order of the players. So the seeding order and the first player are defined with a random method. There is no winner of a random method, as in head-to-head, which basically that means is if I win the die roll, I go first. I do not get to choose who goes first. Generally, Top Deck, the software, My notes are on the right, by the way. The software will randomize the seeding order. So if you're using Top Deck and it gives you your pairings for the round, players should sit in the order that it is given on their screen. And it will show them on their screen like 1, 2, 3, 4. They should sit in that order. I recommend they just roll a dice to see who goes first at that point. If you would like, and this is certainly doable, but you have to make sure you announce this, you can say seat 1 goes first, because that is just as random as anything else. But I recommend letting players roll a dice for it. Once we get to the single elimination portion of a tournament, the player with the highest standing will go first, followed by the player with the next highest standing, etc., etc., etc. Just like regular Magic. If you're in the top 8, and the player in the match who has the highest standing goes first, and then the player who has the second highest standing goes second. It's just that there are only 2 players, so we don't really need to qualify that far. Again, Top Deck will automatically assign the seeding in that order, and it'll sort itself out. If a player leaving the game would affect current or imminent game actions, these actions occur as though the player is still in the game until the end phase. So, this minimizes the disruption of a player conceding and prevents abuse. There are a lot of circumstances where a player leaving a game in someone else's turn can have negative consequences to that game. For example, let's say I have a Heliod the Suncrowned and a Walking Ballista with 2 counters on it. This is an infinite combo. I can take a counter off my Walking Ballista, deal 1 damage to a player. I gain a life from Heliod, and I get to put a counter on my Walking Ballista. We're back at the start point. I presented a loop, but my opponent has 1 left life, so I can just kill the whole table. If I do this, I point my 1 damage towards a player, and they concede, my ability will fizzle, and my combo will be stopped. And that's something that we call king-making, and it is discouraged, and it's... Yeah, it is discouraged. And the rules here is to prevent that from happening. It is to prevent a player from using this tournament mechanic to modify the outcome of the game in a way that is generally seen as negative. There are other combo decks that are designed specifically to work with 3 opponents. So, for example, some card might be like, when this creature enters, you make a 1/1 token for each opponent you have. And if you have 3 opponents, you make 3 tokens, and there might be some cards like sacrifice 3 creatures, I don't know, do a thing. And so if a player concedes in the middle of this combo, the combo may not work. So we use this rule to allow players to still concede, but to prevent these issues from happening. There's been a bunch of ways to try and solve this and fix this in the past. I'm sure some of you have heard the discourse about... there was a rule at one point, I think, where a player could only concede at sorcery speed, so main phase, empty stack. And if they needed to concede before that, then they can talk to a judge. And that rule sucks. That sucks. Because if I am having a horrible time, and I'm hating this game, and I'm hating the people that I'm playing with, and I just want to go, I shouldn't have to explain to a judge why I'm having such a terrible time. I should just be allowed to stand up and walk away. So, and that is why I like this rule. It doesn't prevent that. It allows the players to just be like, actually guys, I'm out, goodbye. And it doesn't cause issues. So, if the players who are remaining want to call a judge and ask if that judge can help facilitate, making the actions continue to occur until the end phase, as if the player was there, then the players can ask for that. But this rule allows players to concede as they would in any other format. Conceding is a thing that... Conceding is a tournament mechanic that functions differently in CEDH, in that the game doesn't end when you concede, and that really, really causes issues sometimes. Okay. Part 3. So, end of round procedure. there are two options given. I prefer the second option. So the first option is basically when there's 75 minutes or less in the round times, you give the players n turns, where n is the number of remaining players. So if one player's been knocked out, time of the round is called, they get 3 additional turns. Same rules as normal, 3 additional turns after this one. So if it's player A's turn, then B has a turn, C has a turn, A has a turn, game over. If player A has already indicated they are passing the turn, and then time is called, then turn 0 is player B's turn. Same as regular Magic. I don't recommend we do this. I do not recommend we hand out extra turns for these events. It blows out. I have done this before. I have had like 15, 20 minutes extra beyond the round time. Again, these games can be very complex, and sometimes turns can be very long. I have seen players take 15 minutes on a turn, and generally when the player takes 15 minutes on a turn, they are either winning the game or very, very much trying to win the game very hard. I've seen players take 15 minutes on the turn and it not be slow play, 100%. And so it's not crazy for if you give them 4 extra turns, it's not insane for that to be an extra 20 minutes, and we just don't want that. Every round going 20 minutes over time is crazy, and it's just not good for us. So what I do recommend is the other option, which is quite simply, if the game is incomplete, when time is called, the player finishes the turn that it's currently on, and then the game is a draw. So this 2.5 AB does also mention additional turns. The additional turns is specifically if you're giving a slow play penalty, and you're giving additional turns on the clock due to slow play. So generally, there are no additional turns in 2.5 AB. Now, I recommend 85-minute round times. As we'll see later on, the minimum recommended is 75. But in my experience, 85-minute round times and having no additional turns is fine. This does the job. Players can simply play faster if they do not wish to have their game be a draw. Part 4. So this is talking about hidden information. In a 1v1 tournament, if I have a card that says, look at target player's hand, do X thing, versus target player reveals the hand, do X thing, those are the same instruction. But in 1v1, in multiplayer, those are not the same thing. If I am looking at a player's hand, I cannot reveal that hand to the other players. And these rules very, very clearly lay out that I should not be doing that, basically. So it's definitely worth checking out the full text of this rule. There's a big list of different zones and who can reveal the hidden cards. So if you have a face down permanent, if you are looking through a player's library, if it's like a face down spell on the stack or whatever, who can look at it? Who can reveal that card physically? And common time this comes up is with opposition agent, for example. So if my opponent cracks a fetch land, I play an opposition agent, I start searching through their deck. I am allowed to verbally reveal any hidden information I want. Someone can ask, are they playing Thassa's Oracle? And I can say, absolutely they are. They're also playing, Underworld Breach. But I'm not allowed to physically reveal those cards, which means I'm allowed to lie about it. And the player whose deck it is also allowed to lie about it. They're like, I'm not running Thassa's Oracle. He's lying to you. So, and that's the big thing with this hidden information is, unless I'm dealing with my own hidden information, unless the information is something that I have access to as the owner of that information, generally, so it's my library or it's my face down cards, whatever, then I shouldn't be revealing it. This is not transferable through controlling effects. If I Mindslaver someone and then I search their library, I cannot force them to reveal the cards in their library. Same thing. But, again, players are always allowed to verbally reveal the information. They're allowed to lie about it, they're allowed to bluff about it, they're allowed to be completely truthful, but they are not allowed to physically reveal it. Okay, part 5. So, Commander is played in pods of 4, and this rule set recommends that players that can't be matched in pods of 4 receive a bye for that round. This means that up to 3 players can receive a bye in every round, which we'll get to later is challenging, is definitely challenging. Regarding match points, players earn n+1 match points, where n is the standard number of players, which is 4 plus 1, 5. In these events, players will get 5 points per match win. The reason that this is very important is, remember again, if the game is a draw, everyone gets 1 match points. The number of match points given out for a win should be more than the number of match points given out for a draw. So if we were to do 3 match points for a win, we're giving out 4 match points for a draw. It's split among 4 people, but still. So the numbers don't quite add up, basically. So through some trial and error and testing, 5 points has sort of become the sweet spot that we will give for a match win. This definitely does some strange things. Definitely does some strange things. This means that, in regular Magic, 3 draws is equivalent to a win. In this game, 5 draws is equivalent to a win. Keep in mind, and this will also get back into this later, only 1 out of every 4 persons is winning every round, basically. Where in regular Magic, half the players win every round. In this game, 1/4 of the players win every round. This also massively changes what a bye is worth. This also massively changes what a match win is worth. But we'll get into that later. But yes, 5 points for a match win, and they recommend that if we cannot pair a pot of 4, the remaining players get a bye. So, part 6. This is the recommended Swiss round layout for a Commander tournament. So you probably notice a couple of things in this. First thing is, these seems like not many rounds. And the second thing is top 10, top 40. Those are not numbers that we generally see in a top cut. So I'll be honest, I don't actually know how top 40 works. If we get a 130 player tournament, we'll figure it out then. Top 10 is quite simple, and I really love top 10. I think the top 10 is a fantastic problem to fantastic solution to a problem we have. So the top 10, basically, the top 2 players do not play in the first round of the knockouts of the single elimination tournament portion. Sorry. Generally, if we have, say, a top 16, then we have 4 pods of 4 players who all play. Each of those pods gets 1 winner. Everyone else gets knocked out. That's 4 players. Those 4 players go into a single pod of 4, and then the winner of that is the winner. With the top 10 rule, we set aside the top 2 seeds, so seed 1, seed 2. They do not play in the first round of the single elimination portion. The other 8 players get distributed into 2 pods. Of those 2 pods, we get 2 winners. Those 2 winners play the 2 players who were set aside at the start. So one really cool thing about this is it very heavily disincentivizes IDing, because if you let's say for example that you are guaranteed. Okay, let's say I am at the top of the Swiss standings, and I'm like, I am guaranteed in top 16, top 10. I'd say I'm guaranteed top 10. No matter what, I'm guaranteed to get the top 10. Even if I lose this game, I'm getting top 10. One of my opponents offers me a draw. They just say, hey, do you want an ID? I know you'll get in. I'm going to get in too. Let's say for some reason everyone's going to get in, which is unlikely, to be honest. Well, if I decide to ID, I do not play this round, but I'm playing the next round. If I decide to play and I win, then I do not have to play the next round. So it sort of moves the ID further into the tournament. I can choose to not play this round and perhaps guarantee playing the next round. Or if I do choose to play this round and I win, I guarantee I don't have to play the next round. which is very valuable. So I'm a big fan of the top 10. It works quite well. Regarding the number of rounds, yes, that is very low as well. But again, remember that only a quarter of the players are winning each round. And also, this sort of helps the fact that if rounds are 85 minutes long, and we're only having 5 of them instead of 7 or 8 of them, that cuts down a lot as well. That makes things a lot shorter. So, quick quiz. Feel free to unmute your microphones about this one. If we have 32 players, how many undefeated players will remain after 2 rounds in a 1v1 tournament? How many undefeated players will remain after 2 rounds in a commander tournament? I'll give you a minute to do the maths, but if anyone wants to unmute and tell me what you reckon, happy to hear it. Well, let's do the maths. So, in a 32-player event in 1v1, so we're playing Modern or something, half the players will remain undefeated after the first round, which is 16, and half of that will remain undefeated after the second round, which is 8. In Commander, a quarter of the players remain undefeated after the first round, which is 8, which is 8, and a quarter of those players remain undefeated after the second round, which is 2. 8 and 2. This is a stark difference, and this is another reason that we need to run less rounds for our competitive commander. You simply will have less undefeated players. So it's pretty reasonable to say that once you have, if you want like all of your X1s to get in, for example, then you need to run enough rounds for all the X1s for there to be less X1s than there are top spots. And in a 1v1 tournament, that number is just so much higher, so many more rounds you need. Now, and this one, I'm not going to get you to do the maths on this one because the maths is actually quite annoying and takes a bit of time. But what about 31 players? How does this change? In a 1v1 tournament, it doesn't change. We are still going to have 16 wins per round. Just one of those wins is a bye. So we're still going to have 8 winners at the end of the 1v1, after 2 rounds of 1v1 tournament. But in a commander tournament, we're going to have 3 byes per round. And I've done the maths, and it's about 5 or 6 undefeated players, which is crazy. And if anyone has a solution for this, please let me know. But my God, byes are powerful in this format. Byes are incredibly powerful in this format. Like, just crazy strong. From memory, the tiebreakers that byes give you are quite good, I believe. And if you're only playing 4 rounds, having a quarter of your rounds being a guaranteed win with very good tiebreakers is kind of a huge deal. So byes being incredibly powerful is definitely an issue that this format has, and I do not know the way to solve that. I really don't. Maybe make byes 4 points. I don't know. But byes are really, really strong. Just something to keep in mind. Okay. That is the MTR section of this. Does anyone have any questions so far about anything we've talked about so far? I figured I'd give you a quick break. I'm going to drink some water. Water's important. Alright, well, if you've got no questions, let's continue on. I hope you're all finding this very interesting, and none of you have fallen asleep on this wonderful Saturday morning. But if you have, there's a recording. Alright, let's push on into the IPG. This is a little, hopefully shorter. I have less notes for it anyway. So, once again, the Monarch Supplemental IPG is very similar to the supplemental MTR in that sections have just been inserted into the IPG. So, as I mentioned before, game losses in this format are the same as a match loss. You're playing best of one, so for some of the penalties in this document, the application of game loss has been modified. Not all, only some. There are many times where someone is getting a game loss and they're just getting a match loss, and that is harsher than a 1v1 tournament, but that is how they've chosen to keep it. Sometimes it has been lessened. So, the other change with this is, again, very relevant to the above. Normally, the third warning for the same gameplay error gets upgraded to a game loss. In this, it is the fourth warning in a game of the same gameplay error. Simply because the third infraction is not worth a match loss, right? Like, our current IPG does not give a match loss for 3 upgrades, so this one is trying to push that a little further away. This is only true for gameplay errors, not true for tournament errors. If you do, what's a tournament error? The only one I can think of is tardiness and cheating. If you do a tournament error twice, then you're gonna get a game loss still. Okay, part 2. Missed triggers. This is a big one. This is a really, really big one, and one that certainly springs to mind when people think about like what the potential issues with CEDH could be. So, the policy inside the Monarch IPG is the opponents come to a majority decision whether to put the trigger on the stack or not. I miss my trigger. I have 3 opponents. We call Judge. The Judge goes, great, you 3 players, would you like this to be on the stack or not? 2 players say yes, 1 player says no. Trigger goes on the stack. I don't like this. I think this is not perfect. This is really not perfect. I would prefer if the way that I would do this, personally, if I were to change this, and I will not change this, but this is the document we have, this is the document that I recommend using, this is how they recommend we do it, so I recommend we stick to it. But if this was my choice, I would have, if any player does not want the trigger to go on the stack, it does not. So if 2 players say yes and 1 player says no, I would prefer if we did not put the trigger on the stack. It's pretty reasonable, to be honest, for a trigger to be beneficial to 2 of the opponents and detrimental to 1 of the opponents. If the one person who it is who is detrimental to is the person who is like winning this game, for example, and this trigger is slowing everyone down, then the other 2 players may want this trigger to go on the stack to slow them down. But if the trigger isn't missed and the player who really cares about it, who does not want the trigger to happen, just continues to play on as if that trigger hasn't missed, and then 2 or 3 game actions later, a judge is called and suddenly that trigger's on the stack. I find that very disruptive. I do not like this, but again, this is the rules that we have. Now, HCE, again, majority of the remaining opponents must decide on the cards returned. This is our Thoughtseize fix. Sorry, this is our Thoughtseize fix. If I do a HCE and my opponent must look at my hand and choose the card that I put in there or whatever, the hand is revealed to all the players, all my opponents, and they, as a majority, must choose which card or cards are getting HC'd back to my deck or graveyard or wherever the hell. Probably not graveyard. This one I'm happy with. I think this makes sense to me. So the reason that I'm happy with this is mistrigger is a binary thing, whereas hidden card error is not a binary thing. Hidden card error is a thing where there are multiple avenues and multiple choices that can be made. And HCE is not something that the opponents generally make decisions based on, right? Like, it can be if it's not spotted straight away, I suppose. But it's more likely that players make decisions if I don't commit HCE, right? If I reveal the card when I'm supposed to, that I'm supposed to be putting in my hand, then a player will have that information, and they can make a decision based on that. If I'm just forgetting to reveal the card, then they're not making a decision based on that. Whereas with miss triggers, the gameplay of my opponents can heavily change depending on if I miss a trigger or not. So for both of these, the opponents must come to a majority decision. Next, tardiness. Generally, tardiness is a game loss. Like we said, this is actually a match loss. This is also, again, this is disruptive to the other players in the game in a huge way as well. Again, there are a bunch of combos that only work if you have 4 players. And look, that is what it is. If the game must go on with 3, then the game must go on with 3. But players who arrive late and would normally receive game loss skip their first turn. I like turn skips, and I would add more turn skips into this document. I think a turn skip and a game loss are not incredibly dissimilar. So a turn skip in CEDH versus a game loss in regular Magic are not incredibly dissimilar, honestly. Like, both are pretty harsh, but they won't just end the game. They give your opponent a much better chance of winning the game. But it still lets you play the match, and I like that. So I like turn skips. This is the only turn skip in this rule set. But, you know, if anyone's making their own rule set, I reckon we'll put more in. Turn skips, notably, are supported by the comprehensive rules, which I think is neat. Because you might be looking at this and be like, how the hell do we make someone skip their first turn? We do that in Magic. There's a bunch of stuff that lets us skip phases and steps, and there's nothing that makes... Well, no, is there something that makes you skip a turn? Oh, no, there is, yeah. There are a few cards that skip turns, like Chronotog, maybe? But yes, so skipping a turn is something that is functioning within the comprehensive rules, and tardiness players get skip turn instead of a game loss. Slow play. So, notably, if you cast your minds back to our end of match procedures, I mentioned there was 2 options, 2.5 AA, 2.5 AB. This version of slow play only applies to 2.5 AB. This is the one that I prefer. There is another version that works the other one. If you want to go look at that, you're more than welcome to. If you give slow play, if you give a warning for slow play, a penalty for slow play, then award the time equal to the judge call plus 6 minutes. I think I said that you get extra turns before. I was wrong. They just get 6 minutes. Next, deck problem. Once again, if an opponent must make a choice, in this one it is the majority of opponents. If it turns out that somehow someone like Oblivion ringed my card last game and it's in their deck, and now or like I've drawn my opponent's card from last game and we have to replace it with something. If a deck problem appears and cards need to be changed from the deck, the majority of opponents must come to a decision on what missing cards replace each incorrect cards. This is uncommon because the time that this happens most often is with failure to sideboard, right? There are no sideboards in CEDH, so this just doesn't come up very much. But again, if it must come up, then the majority of opponents must make a decision. The next one is bribery. In-game agreements is not bribery. If there are 4 of us in a game and I offer my opponent some incentive to not attack me, that is in the game. If I offer them that I won't attack them next turn, if I offer them that, I'm going to cast a Cyclonic Rift at my end step if you don't do this thing, that's not bribery. Bribery is only for outside the game stuff. If I offer someone $20 to not attack me, that's bribery. If I offer someone I don't know, that I'll harmless offering my commander to them if they don't attack me. That's crazy, but it's not bribery. Notably, in-game agreements are not enforceable. If a player calls you over to their table and says, Judge, he said if I didn't attack him, he would cast a Cyclonic Rift, and then he didn't. Shrug, don't listen to your opponents, maybe, is my advice. You can't enforce that deal. Your opponent, they can't enforce that deal. That it is what it is. They're also very uncommon in CDH. Like, basically, if your CDH players are making deals and agreements, then they're bad CDH players. They are not going to win many events, and they're probably going to be discouraged from doing such things. Like, if there are two players in a pod who are having some kind of agreement and two players who are experienced with the format, I wouldn't be unreasonable. I would expect that those players would like talk to them afterwards and be like, hey, look, this sort of stuff doesn't happen. I would also expect that those players probably wouldn't win. Basically, like, making deals is a bad idea in CDH, where it is very cutthroat. People will lie to you, basically. So this is uncommon. Alright, we're nearly done now. So, other common considerations in CDH tournaments. Deck checks. I'm sure you're dreading the deck checks. The decks of 100 cards where there's 4 of them, and they're huge, and they're triple sleeved. Some of them are very expensive too. I've deck checked a beta Time Twister in a CDH event. Like, there are some more expensive cards in these decks, tell you what. With deck checks, I recommend checking 2 of the decks for sleeves, and then checking 1 of the decks slightly more thoroughly. I wouldn't expect you to do a full 100 card check, but focus on sleeves, focus on transparency of sleeves. If you have time to count the cards, count the cards. If you if you can quickly look at the deck list and run an eye over it and make sure there's nothing weird in there, that's great. Top Deck makes deck lists very easily accessible. Players must submit a deck list, or can submit a deck list through a link in Top Deck, and you can. It's great. It's super easy. You just like click on their name and click on the deck list thing, and it pops up a Moxfield page. It's excellent. So kingmaking is another thing that comes up. What can come up? Kingmaking refers to when a player is no longer able to win the game, or unlikely to win the game, but they can still change the outcome of the game for other players. Which basically means, well, when they make a decision that heavily favors one opponent and doesn't really favor themselves. For example, let's say a player has like a rule of law effect, right? Each player can cast only 1 spell a turn, and another player is like a dedicated combo deck where they want to be casting 4 spells a turn. Or they have like a Bowls Citadel in play, for example. I'm about to lose this game. Someone's attacking me for lethal. I cast a Disenchant on the rule of law, and then I die. That's kingmaking. I'm choosing who I'm advantaging one of my opponents, and in a way that doesn't really help me at all. We can't stop this. Basically, essentially, like the other thing about kingmaking is it is not always clear. Sometimes something will look like kingmaking and it's not. Sometimes people will think something's kingmaking and it's not. Sometimes players will make a bad decision thinking that it's fine, and others will think that it's kingmaking. It's super hard to pin down, but it is what it is, basically. Like, we can't stop it. It's a decision made in the game. If a player is making a decision in the game, even if it's a poor decision, even if it's an unsporting, quotation, decision, so be it. We can't stop that. So a lot of players, so I've actually had players come up to me before and ask about kingmaking and be like, hey, my opponent did this thing, and I'm like, I don't know, dude, they made a legal decision in the game of Magic. I'm not going to stop that. We can't stop that. Reversing decisions is another big one. This one's kind of tough. So again, we have the regular old decision reversing stuff of I'm gonna crack my fetch and get a Bayou. Wait, no, Tropical Island. That's fine. That's totally fine. The times where this comes up is player casts a disenchant on the ruler law, and another player goes, whoa, if you do that, this player B is gonna win next turn. And the first player goes, oh, okay, I won't do that then. That's tougher. That's much tougher because they have gained information. And generally, we do not allow reversing of decisions when a player has gained information. But this is a circumstance that simply cannot come up or simply shouldn't come up in a 1v1 tournament. And it's a tough one. This rule set we've been talking about does not have a clear answer for this. Generally, I would leave it up to the table, and if the table disagrees or dislikes or doesn't want this to happen, then refer to basic policy. Basic policy says if a player has gained information, then they cannot reverse that decision. If the table's like, oh yeah, that's fine, you can do it, then that's fine. But if the player if the player who has the rule of law getting disenchanted is like, whoa, hang on, no, this isn't good, then this player has made a legal choice. They have made their play. Let it go, basically. Another issue that a lot of people have talked to me about and doesn't really come up very much is something, I think it's called like mana bullying or something. So player 1 casts a spell. And again, keep in mind, priority is a very important thing in this. Player 1 casts a spell. Player 2 passes priority, perhaps because they believe player 3 or 4 have a counter spell, and they think that they're going to counter the spell. That's a gamble they're allowed to make. Player 3 passes priority. Player 4 says... player 4 can tap a land, which is a game action, and that will create a new round of priority. So now player 1 gets priority again, player 2 gets priority again, player 3 gets priority again, player 4 gets priority again. People say that the reason they do this is like to bully you into acting. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. I think it's sort of like, player 4 is like, I don't have a counterspell. If you have a counterspell, then you have to do it, and then they can activate a land and re-give priority. And that's doable, right? Like, if we get to player 4, and player 4's like, nah, I ain't got one. And then player 2 goes, well, I do, but it's too late now. Player 4 can go, I'll tap a land, give priority. That is a legal choice. It's weird. It's super weird, and it's something, again, it can only happen in multiplayer. I haven't personally seen this happening very much, and the whole, like, bullying part of it, I don't quite understand, but it's a thing people are talking to me about. Bluffing, lying, helping are things that happen. If a player says, okay, on this player's end step, I'm going like out of priority, or let's say we're in like the combat phase or whatever, and a player says, in this person's end step, I'm going to cast a Cyclonic Rift. People might pass priority, so people might, like, my player next in line of me says they're going to cast Cyclonic Rift on the end step. I was going to flash in some creature on the end step, but because they've said that, I won't. So we pass priority through the end step. I don't cast my thing because they said they're going to do the thing, and then they don't do it. They don't cast Cyclonic Rift. Well, whoops, I no longer have priority and can no longer cast in that end step, and now it's my turn and I've missed my window. That's unfortunate for me. And again, my advice for players is don't listen to your opponents. Don't trust your opponents, basically. This happens. People lie, people bluff, people will help each other in many different ways. And that is just the nature of multiplayer. Even if politics are dissuaded, even if agreements don't really happen, people still bluff, people still lie, people still help each other. And that is what it is. And of course, the 11-hour games. We've all heard the recent story about the 11-hour finals from somewhere in Europe. I don't remember where. So, my advice on this one is don't let it happen. Be heavy-handed. Give out slow play warnings. Do not let a game go for 11 hours. Do not let a game go for 2 hours. Well, 2 hours isn't the end of the world. An 11-hour game should not happen. An 11-hour game is ridiculous, and barring... No, it just shouldn't happen. You are all judges, and you should have the understanding and experience that you can step in and tell players that this is not okay when a game is going too long. When there is table talk, and table talk is a big one. Table talk is a really big one. I do have some advice on table talk. If players, and usually it's two players, are discussing like what to cast or like what should I do next or whatever, a line that I really like is, I need you to stop talking about your plays and make your plays. This can be given with a slow play warning or without, whatever works. But if a game is going slowly, especially because of table talk, speed it up. Tell them to stop that, basically. And if they don't, then give them a warning. Well, just give them a warning anyway. Do not let 11-hour games happen. Do not let 3-hour games happen. Do not let players, just push beyond reasonable times. Is the simple answer to that. Just stop them, basically. And with that, thank you. That is the end of the presentation. Does anyone have any final questions?
I can see why they definitely recommend not to have a 3-player pod with all the majority of things. So what happens when one player is knocked out early for spectating and we have things like the miss trigger needing a majority, but there only might be 2 opponents left?
Great question. Yes, a random player is selected to make that choice. That is in here. I didn't highlight it, but it is in here. If no majority decision is reached, the final decision will be made by a randomly chosen opponent.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, the whole giving out 3 buys. This is part of it for sure, but a lot of decks, like I said, are just simply not designed to function in they function differently in 3-player games. So having a 3-player game may be incredibly detrimental to one person or incredibly beneficial to another person. And instead of doing that, they just decided to give everyone the win, which I guess is fair. Some decks just function better when they have 2 opponents. Some decks function worse.
Yep, makes absolute sense to me.
Any other questions? Fantastic. Well, that was easy. All right. Well, if there are any more questions later on, please feel free to send me a message. I'm going to upload this video to YouTube. I'll put the link in the Slack and put it here as well. Feel free to share it to anybody. Outside of the judge community is fine. Whoever, whenever, whatever. If you have any feedback on this, I'd love to hear it. Yeah, and if there's anything that I said was wrong or you have any disagreements, please let me know. Happy to talk about it. But thank you all very much for listening. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for waking up so early on this Saturday morning. And hanging out. It's been a good time.